That wasn't as slick as I would hope would be, but hello and welcome to the first IoT Hub, what was previously known as IoT North. I'm Paul Wheels. I'm joined on the show with John Staveley, my good counterpart. Hi, John. How are you doing?
All right. Yeah, not bad.
Good. So, John and I have been chatting, and we've been some announcements with our sponsor today from Newcastle University, and we've got Charles Sellers joining us from the university. Hi, Charles. How are you?
Hi, Paul. Thanks very much.
So we've rebranded IoT Hub, and the reason being is we're moving with the technology landscape. Evidently, AI is making a really big push forward, and with our sponsors at Newcastle University, there is very much that drive on edge and AI and IoT, and we're getting the support from Newcastle University to really push forward and build this community in a wide scale across with a number of partners from the university, but also at the university itself as well in the hub. Charles, do you want to give some insight into the announcement today from the university, please?
Yeah, sure. It's the culmination of about 14 months work. These things never go quickly, but the ESPRC is part of the UKRI that, if you like, issue grants out to, if you like, for academic research. Working, if you like, as a visiting researcher for 3 years prior to going on as a member of staff, although part-time at this time last year, we found that really when these calls were coming out is that, say, for argument's sake, you could apply for 5 million. And if you like, one university used to get it, so you might get two. What the government have been looking at and doing quite successfully, in actual fact, is bringing the universities together. And what this really means is that instead of, if you like, one university getting 5 million, 5 universities get 1 million, because in actual fact, you get a situation where we have at Newcastle School of Computing, where we work very closely with universities such as Cardiff. And if you like, the expertise down in Cardiff and the expertise that we have in Newcastle, and both teams are actually growing, if you like, complement each other. Mm-hmm. So we're not duplicating the work, but we're actually bringing in the resource, the experience, the expertise, and the knowledge that actually is required. So from a business perspective and as a business model, it's working extremely well.
Excellent. And can we just share with the community here as well that, you know, this is a really exciting investment from the government with the university. Phenomenal resources are made available. But how do people help find this? How do we get to communicate with them? What's the plans?
Well, that's a very good question. As you know, you and I have known each other for a few years now. Yeah. I've looked at what IoT North is about. I looked at it when it first started off. You then linked up with John down in Leeds, and I know you've got something else up your sleeve further south. I'll let you suggest or announce that as and when you're ready. But what we're looking at is actually engagement. We need to understand what's happening in the university. And the National Edge AI Hub is working in artificial intelligence, but specifically looking at edge computing and cybersecurity and real data in real time. And as a non-academic and a non-techie, I look at it this way, is that you cannot have artificial intelligence unless you have the algorithms that can actually take the real clean data on board and then actually spin it out from there. So, you know, it's the usual situation. If you put rubbish in, you'll get rubbish out. What we're looking at, in actual fact, is to get the real data absolutely clean, accurate, and working on the edge. Now, that I think is going to be important. We're one of about 9 hubs announced at 9:30 this morning by UKRI that are very much where, if you like, at the leading edge when it comes to one of the hubs.
Yeah, and pardon the pun with the edge, right?
Yeah.
But so you have a website which was launched this morning. Let me just quickly find. So it's edgeaihub.co.uk for further info. Is that right?
That's right. You'll have to excuse that. It's not, if you like, the old singing and dancing website that you would like, but we started that 4 days ago, and we put it up at 20 to 10 this morning. The difficulty is that we've all been under embargo. So the difficulty that means it's a press embargo, but it means that we couldn't even tell our colleagues that we'd actually, if you like, won the bid to set up the hub. So we've had to work discreetly behind the background. But yes, it gives you the basics, and it gives you the idea as to who we are, where we are. It'll give you the main 7 people that are involved in this. It will get added to, because obviously we've got another 11 academics, whether they're professors or senior research doctorates in the field of expertise. There'll be more information with regards to the 11 universities. So, that's, let's get it right, Durham, Hull, Imperial College in London, Southampton, Swansea, Cardiff, Warwick, Lancaster, Queen's University, Belfast, St Andrews, and what's the other one? Oh, yes, University of West Scotland. And I can assure everybody that's listening, if you like, that we've got 12 eclectic universities in there. I don't know every single professor that's on the project, but I have been engaged with them, and I have been looking at their background. And if I had to select a team, I don't think I could have actually selected a better team than what we've actually got in the research. But yeah, the edgeaihub.co.uk is there for a start, and then it will actually build it out.
Fantastic. I mean, congratulations to you and the team, Savas, Raj. It's been a phenomenal amount of work, and with your colleagues as well. So congratulations on it. I think it's an absolutely fantastic win for the university, for the region, and actually for the country as well, because of the very smart way that this is being done in collaboration with the other universities, and getting a real breadth of scope across the country as a whole, logistically, as well as mindset. So congratulations. Looking forward to work with you, and thank you for trusting us with our community and bringing us into the fold as well.
Yeah, I hope we can deliver some face-to-face meetups and get some people energizing in a room together. So I run 3 meetups. This is one of them, but the other 2 are face-to-face, and the real magic happens when you get people in a room talking about problems, solving problems together, and networking, and that's really important.
Yeah, we're going to arrange that. I mean, that's part of the discussion that we've had, but in general. But now we need to get down into specifics, because in a sense, although if you like, the main hardcore hub is based in Newcastle, there's nothing to stop us setting up regional virtual hubs. But then again, what my aim is to get all the 12 universities actually having a facility within theirs. So those, if you like, London can go into Imperial, those in Southampton or in that region, or South Wales can go into either Swansea or Cardiff. Don't forget, our friends in, Scotland and Northern Ireland. It's how we actually put this together. So we're going to set up an exemplar, but it's not going to be done just, if you like, what I think, or if you like, what my academic colleagues think. It's what the industry think, and therefore the reach out from our perspective, and actually looking at yourselves in the AIoT hub, we can actually grow together. So if we can facilitate and support you doing what you're doing, then, if you like, we hope that the growth of your own network will actually help yourselves, help your members, but also, if you like, help the industry and UK PLC.
Excellent, thanks. And it's really exciting opportunity for every type of business of every size, right? This is a new world that we're all embarking on at an accelerated rate. If you look at the adoption and evolution that took place over the past 18 months, is just absolutely phenomenal. An extremely exciting space. So congratulations. We do have Scott sat ready to join us. Scott, welcome. Thank you for the sorry for the little bit of disruption with the announcement. But I think you'll agree, right? It's an absolutely fantastic thing to be invested in by the government, and for a launch. Scott, public sector taking IoT. This is a talk that I personally find really interesting. To hear on how public sector is really getting the value and getting beyond that sort of POC graveyard that we were talking about before we went live, right? Do you want to do a little intro on yourself?
Yeah, thanks very much, Paul. I'm Scott Andrews. I work for Conwy Council. Have done with a couple of little breaks elsewhere, but since '96, the IoT side of things, I could start off on servers, and when I came back to the authority, there was a restructure, and I ended up on the innovation side of things. And at the time, that was just when LoRaWAN sensors were being pushed as a possible solution by Welsh Government. And that's where people were saying you could buy IoT sensors for like 20 quid and stuff. So therefore managers were coming back going, this is amazing new technology, let's all use it. And you can buy some sensors with £20, but they're awful and they don't really exist and things. So trying to manage, learn the market and then go back to management saying actually what you've been told fallacies really. So that's been a big journey in itself, but we've managed to get some good experiences now.
I've been following Scott on LinkedIn for a while now and watching his posts, and this is really, from what I've seen you do, it's real coal-face IoT. It's very practical, solving actual problems, not some vendor coming to you with a shiny new chip that it espouses it can do stuff, but real like measuring a river and its rise and fall and temperatures, and there's no connectivity, so putting a LoRaWAN mast on top of a nearby school to get that connectivity, and very, very practical IoT.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely.
Scott, over to you. If you'd like to share your screen, I'll get that up, and really look forward to this talk. Charles, John, I'm going to remove your lovely faces to give some space for Scott to talk.
Okay, right. Okay, so I just said there at the beginning, Scott Andrews, I work on the innovation integration elements in Conwy County Borough Council. Because of the IoT side of things as well and how amazing it is, but as a public sector employee, we're not allowed to advocate anything as well. But my colleague and I were like, this is just amazing. So we've also set up a separate company, which is all declared, it's all above board. So I'm business partner in Sensibility Limited as well. So just because people might not know where Conway is, and this is stuff that because I did a speech to the Things conference in Amsterdam back in September. So obviously we're in the UK, we're in Wales, we're up at the north. So we actually have stronger economic links with Liverpool and Manchester, which you might tell from my accent. We're 1,100 square kilometres, which I learned for our European audience. That's about the same size as Rome as a total whole. Up on the coastal strip, that's where 80% of our population lives. It's where the railway goes through. It's where the main coastal railway between London and Dublin goes through. The A55 expressway goes through. The area there is all Victorian coastal resorts, really, predominantly English speaking. And it's also where I live. And then the rest of the county that's not covered in red is is tourist based as well, but it's also rural. It's very agricultural with livestock. The land does not lend itself to arable farming and things. And then in the green squares, it covers about 34% of the authority, I think it was. That's the national park, Eryri, Snowdonia National Park, which also provides challenges as well, obviously because people come to visit it because it's a beautiful part of the UK, but we also have to be sympathetic with the work that we're doing, planning and things, which we'll cover further in the presentation. So just some photos of Conway. You can see this background here. That's the castle that gives us the logo for Conwy Council. Llandudno Pier, it's got two shores. This is the sandy shore, West Shore, my favourite one. Colwyn Bay, where I live, is also another big sandy beach. We've got mountains in the national park, as I mentioned. That's Tryfan, a grade 1 scramble. Recommend it to anyone. It's amazing. Market towns, Llanrwst, and we also have dams as well, providing drinking water and doing flood alleviation schemes for Wales and over into the border, because this dam actually provides water into the River Dee, providing drinking water to Liverpool and Chester as well. So there's Sensibility, we just mentioned about. IoT, it's information of things, information. It's all important, especially on the public sector side of things, because you have hard evidence. with the public sector, it's very easy to respond to anecdotal or angry people, keyboard warriors, definitely on the local newspapers. And it becomes important to have hard evidence about, people saying, well, I think this road is very busy and I think something needs to be done about it. There's so much money that's just being cut away and hollowed, and public sector is being hollowed out. Local government especially, I'd say, is being hollowed out. It means that you can start to justify, why you need to, whether you should resurface a particular road, whether you should refurbish some public toilets, or whether you should close public toilets, or improve all sorts of different facilities. So I think having the remote sensors actually allows you to gather hard evidence, which then allows the elected members to make hard decisions and defend those decisions as well. Excuse me. So on the itinerary, I'm going to go through examples of deployments that we've done through Conway Council. I'm going to go through some ready reckoners, some rules of thumb. These are not exam grade answers that you'll need to get your certifications. These are just quick mental sums you can do, which have really helped us, I think, as we've learnt through the joys of LoRaWAN. And some fine alphabet soup there. So we can also talk about the TTN, TTI, LNS. Okay, so we'll just keep it easy first, because I mentioned then about having data to make hard decisions. This is the footfall counter for a public toilet. Budgets are tight. We have a limited amount of footfall counters. So this footfall counter was moved on 16th of January from one location to another public toilet, and we're gathering data there. Prior to the 16th of January, it was at a rural toilet block, and you can see it's got a very low footfall. Doesn't mean it's wrong, doesn't mean it's under threat of closure or anything like that. It's just valid data pertinent to that actual location, because it's such a small rural locality. You can justify it as well to say it was a small community, and it's not even a tourist location, this community. That's the footfall, that's what it is within that community. It's up to other people to make the decision whether it's valid, has value or not. We're just gathering the data. From the 16th of January, that sensor was relocated to where I live, Ross-on-Sea, which is just outside Conway. It's the most densely populated ward within the county. It has a promenade. People actually come to the promenade as well, and obviously take in the air and all that kind of thing. And you can just see how an order of magnitude of how much busier it is. And this is also out of season as well. That's data from January. You might recognize the graphs if you're familiar with it. We're using Grafana within the county council because it's open source. And users really like is the fact you can drag in on the data and zoom in and do some deeper analysis. So this is the footfall at the Ross-on-Sea toilet block, and you can just see that more or less from 8 o'clock. But basically daylight hours, that is, at this time of year. It's just in constant usage. It's just linear. It's not like there's a peak at lunchtime where maybe when people go for a constitutional or anything. It's just complete linear usage, which I just think demonstrates how busy that is as a toilet block. So we can talk about the measuring footfall and traffic there. So obviously you might want to apply that in town centres and toilets and things, obviously. And I've mentioned precept costs there as an aid memoir, because there's one rural town that I'm aware of where the county council went to close the toilet block. And obviously it's an emotional issue, and the rural town was like, no, the local community council decided to take it on. And you might well know with your council tax bill is made up of your, definitely in Wales, because we've got unitary authorities, but in Wales, your council tax bill is made up of elements from your county council, your community council, and the fire service and the police, and that all comes up to one big bill that you pay on. So the element that comes from the community council, it's called the precept. There's the community council precept. The public toilets that in this rural community their precept ended up being absorbed by those toilets management costs. The toilet was using up 30% of their total precept income. So that's where I think also the footfall counters can work as well. If a county council is deciding that they might want to close the toilet, it's actual hard data to the town council to justify whether they actually want to take on that liability, which is important again whilst all these costs are going up, because whilst we all have these costs personally, so do businesses, so does the public sector, and all these costs are all going up. You can obviously measure footfall into buildings, whether you want to justify the heating of them, libraries, leisure centres, all that kind of thing. Footpaths and gates, that as a highway authority, we have to keep, footpaths open, but whether you can justify replacing a gate with a stile and things like that, you can start to measure that. With sensibility, with my sensibility hat on, we've worked with a wildlife trust where we've put not a footfall sensor, but we've placed an open close sensor on a gate. So you can't count people, but it does give you an indication of busyness. And obviously that gate opens and closes more on a bank holiday or a dry day compared to a wet, windy day in the middle of January. But also have notifications on that gate as well, because if the gate stays open for a long time, it means that the staff after 5 minutes get a notification via email that the gate is left open, and they want to know because of livestock moving over into different fields, because the livestock have to stay in particular paddocks. And then because it's such a long way as well for them to walk to, is that should the gates get closed in the intervening period, they then get an email to say that the gate is closed, which obviously if they're traipsing then across the fields, they can receive the notification and go, I'll turn back to the office and get a hot chocolate. And I think it's also important, to compare that against weather data. If rain and sunshine is affecting it, you know it, we all know it, of course we do, but you can actually start to have the numbers and make hard data. That's what it's about. It's not being subjective. Compare it against historical patterns as well, all the bank holidays and things. Compare it against Easter's, because Easter moves round, so that's a good pattern to compare against. And be notified when gates and doors open and close. Okay, so this is still on Grafana, and this is just weather data. Now I'm picking on weather because we can all relate to it, and we all enjoy looking at this. So you can have the temperature and the humidity data on the top. But what we found works really well is if we place it in actual bands and thresholds and change the colors depending on where it is on that actual data that's come through. That means you can look at a glance, just a quick glance to see what's actually going on. You can see there around the 17th of January, it started to get a bit on the chilly side. This is a weather sensor that's above the river. In Conway, behind me that way, over that way somewhere. So actually, the river, and it's an estuary as well, so it doesn't actually get really cold. It doesn't actually get really windy either, because the castle actually shelters the weather sensor. But we've placed it there nonetheless, just to prove it that it all works. This same weather sensor is a decent lab one. It's got 11 factors that measure. So we've got the air pressure, we've got rainfall and sunlight. So that's really interesting, looking at the sunlight. And now I'm saying that I should have maybe put that on a slide. That's the benefit of hindsight. But the sunlight one, if you look at that over an entire year, you see it becomes really high. 800, 900 watts per square meter during June, and then there we got in January coming down to under 200 watts. It makes a big difference. Wind speeds, this is that's all good. You can see average wind speeds and maximum wind speeds from the same element, and the wind direction. This is good as well because it's based on the river, so the public can actually start to see whether it's worth taking them if they want to go and launch the boats, because we have the moorings in the middle of the river. As we all know, we live on an island in the northeast Atlantic, and we do have the prevailing southwesterlies. So whilst the data there might not be a surprise, it does affirm exactly what we know. We have prevailing southwesterly winds. So that's good. And this sensor is also pretty cool because it detects lightning strikes. I don't know about everyone else, but certainly between Christmas and New Year, there was one night where we had an amazing series of thunderstorms. It was only for about 20 minutes or so, but it was very loud and very bright, and the data's there. So we've shown you how you can have just general weather data. Obviously, if you have multiple weather sensors, you can start to compare against other sites. And I'd also say that's really important within this county. We've got some weather sensors that are still waiting to go out. In this county, we have the small village called Capel Kirrig, which is very often on the Met Office. The main Met Office forecasts is often as one of the rainiest places when there's extreme weather, very often on the national weather for the big wind gusts as well, because it's in a mountain pass near Snowdon, near Wyddfa. And so it's the weather can be quite extreme there comparatively. But also, because of the mountains, because of the prevailing southwesterly winds, and something called the Fawn effect, I hope I've pronounced it right, where the wind comes over the mountains and then dries as it comes down on the leeward side. Our northeastern coast is actually amongst the sunniest and driest parts of Wales, and even competes with some parts of southeast of England. And that's in a distance of like 20 or 30 miles. So the plan there is to start to have this weather data so that we can compare it as a whole as a county council. We compare it there for the public, so the public can compare it. But don't forget as well, it also has big benefits for education as well. In the Welsh syllabus, pupils are asked to understand their own local geography. So even in our county, where we're not a big county, 1,100 square kilometres, as you saw at the beginning, we have some big differences just in rainfall and in sunshine. And so we can actually see that, and that means that kids are interpreting that data from a geography basis, but it means they're reading graphs, they're using computers, and so there's lots of maths elements and interpreting data and things. There's lots of other skills that are just there about reading this information, and I think that's a big something enrichment for the community. And also, obviously, if you're just looking at an incredible amount of rain or incredible amount of wind, you might be able to be predictive before you actually get the reports and go, I think I might need to send a team with the yellow van and the wellies there to go and do some work. I thought I had a second slide repeating it. I couldn't find it the other day. There we go. So this is Storm Isha. That took some data for a different presentation. When the wind gusts were incredible where we were, indeed where I live on the coast, but you can see here how much the temperature increased at that particular time, and it's just insane. Hitting over 15 degrees at night time in January, and that was when the wind was at its peak for us. You can see how the barometric pressure really dropped. The maximum wind speeds there, again, in the river here, but it's sheltered by the castle, so 23.6 meters per second works out about 52 miles per hour wind gusts, so you just double it and add a bit. Which then brings us on to other things you can measure, because if you're measuring rainfall, you might want to think that might be useful to measure streams, and this might be some of the stuff that the guys John and Paul were talking about at the beginning. So we started measuring some of the water levels, maybe it feels like 3 or 4 years ago now. I can't remember, COVID's all blurred it all. And we did try some ultrasound sensors, because there's plenty of photos of ultrasound sensors being used to measure water levels, but we were just getting some really bad results. We went and deployed them up in a village called Dolwyddalan, which is in the national park. It is a rainy location, and we're just getting erratic results. And we ended up putting it down to really heavy rain, affecting the ultrasound results, and also maybe just additional things coming through like leaves and stuff like that, because we'd get like really one massive offset reading. What could it be? And we think it might just be leaves or things. So then we tried to come up with an alternative solution, and we were thinking, well, what's the weakness with the ultrasound sensor? It's the fact that the external environment is affecting the ultrasound weather. So can we protect it? So, okay, let's think of a tube. Right, well, an ultrasound sensor work with that. Turns out not, because of ultrasound cones out, and it meant that if we were going to have a 2 meter long pipe, we would need something that was like a 1.5 meters diameter, which isn't practical in any circumstance. So then we went to a LiDAR sensor just to try it out, and that worked really well. So on the left-hand side photograph there, that's a Conwy Council photo where we're monitoring a stream for a community benefit. And then on the right-hand side, sensibility, we're monitoring a tidal river for a golf course, because when there's a storm surge on the golf course and a high tide, that river actually goes over the golf course and allows the greenkeeper from where he lives 40 kilometers away to see what the river's doing and go, I don't even have to drive down there to see. I know that's not in play today. And then he can just update his answer phone message and the website to say the golf course is closed for that day. So there's lots of different benefits. So whilst my public sector job there has helped my private sector work, it does also work the other way, which I'll mention as we continue through the presentation. So we've ended up placing quite a few of those water sensors in Conway Council. So we've got one town called Llanrwst. You can see the main river Conway that goes through there, that blue band on the left-hand side. And we've placed 6 various water level sensors there. These are the LiDAR pipe sensors. Now working well. And so we've got the data there on a Grafana map. We've got that presented out to the public, and we've got it presented internally to staff. And we've got that just on some graphs as well that people can see. And you can see there the big differences in peaks. We've got this is the Warts in orbit. You can see the little white lines. That's where some data's not lost. It's where this is maybe we're finding an issue with the LiDAR where when the sensor is located in what I would call like a damp dingly dell. Think of an environment which is more kind of ivy and very mossy and stuff. Some of those sensors don't seem to work as well, and I can't think of a reason. I've spoken with a supplier because they're fully IP67, but when they're in an environment which is a whole lot more open, maybe where there's a lot more air going around, I don't seem to have that result. We've amended our design subsequently when we're waiting for those sensors to go out, because that's the way they were purchased, because we will actually use the LiDAR sensors now, but this is the whole journey of it all. We're still waiting for these amended version 2 LiDAR sensors to go out, where with the pipe we've now got holes drilled up all the way up to make sure water can get through and obviously air can get through. And just where the LiDAR sensor is, we've got a series of circles drilled through the pipe at 360 degrees to ensure that there's full draft going through, assuming that all kind of works. I'll have to let you know how that pans out. We're talking about measuring height an awful lot here, measuring water levels, but don't forget you can also measure horizontals as well. So you can see that Snowdon or whatever there is in the distance, and this spiders might be an issue here. So on this road, it's got the viewpoint of the Snowdon Horseshoe, and you have lots of, you've heard of oxbow lakes where a river's kind of straightened out. So when this road has been straightened out, we've ended up with oxbow laybys, and the oxbow laybys have people stopping in them, which isn't an issue. Of course, the good people of these islands and visitors are welcome to enjoy the good views within Wales. And so we can measure horizontally and just measure the distance, because the problem we've got isn't people stopping to take in a view and take some photos, have a snack, have a sandwich and some biscuits and things. The problem we've got is people staying overnight and then we're in camper vans and things, and then just like leaving their waste, the litter, the human waste, they're just throwing it out on the grass and things like that. That's what I've been told. So the county council is the highway authority. So the county council isn't interested in this. The police aren't interested because there's no actual, by the time things happen, by the time things get reported, it's already kind of too late, really. So it was the local community council who approached us asking, could we just help them gather evidence? That's all it is. So we're being agnostic. We're just saying, here are some vehicles. So what we can see here, we just defined a threshold where we're just measuring horizontally. And you can see that when there's a distance less than about 1.5 meters, I think it was, that's defined as something's parked up. And you can see quite clearly on those timelines, on those 3 big U's, that something was parked for a long time overnight. And so that just proves to the highway authorities and proves to the police that people are parking up overnight and sleeping and things. So yeah, that's it. That's evidence for the community council. So I've shown you how you can measure distance of something in the verticals. So you can talk also about rivers and streams, silos. So that can be, grain, chicken feed, salt in salt bins, or the big salt igloos and things potentially, slurry pits for farmers. And you can also measure the horizontal, thinking there for car parking or delivery vehicles, or maybe if you run a car hire business, about the notification of a returned vehicle. The horizontal with the LiDAR also works quite well, because the LiDAR sensors from Dragino, those are the sensors we've used there, have a distance of about 12 meters. So it allows you to cover up to maybe the width of 3 parking bays if you get the curve right. And obviously if a vehicle parks in the parking bay closest to you, you don't know what's in parking bay 2 and 3, but you still know something's parked. So it's good information. I think that's quite a tight return of investment there. And then obviously be notified when something awry happens, if that's what counts as awry in your world. And then you can still compare that against historical patterns. And definitely, yeah, you can see at those parking sites on that A road towards the Snowdonia, the Snowdon Horseshoe, you definitely see higher occupancy in the Oxbow laybys, bank holiday weekends, as you'd expect. But the information is definitely there. So I've mentioned there about how the LiDAR sensor hasn't necessarily worked in some of the more Dingley Dell environments. So this is where we've started to look at the water pressure sensor from Dragino. We're just sticking with the Dragino ones, because if they've gone and worked in that Capel Kirrig environment where it's on the national weather for being wet and windy, we're kind of thinking it's going to work in both places, and they are the reliable bits of kit and they're robust as well. So we've been using the water pressure one, where you actually put the silver node, the stainless steel node, into the water. You have the long cable run, and then the sender unit just up at the top, and that works really well. And we've tried that with sensibility. So there's a guy who's got a private water supply from a dam. The dam was built in the 1820s, 1830s for water power, for a slate quarry, and it's no longer used for that. It's now just a private water supply for a number of houses, and we're just measuring the water supply, the water height there. And as you can see from my next click, there we go. You've got that red line. The vertical red line shows the cable that goes down to the water pressure unit. That's down at the very bottom, and the LoRaWAN sender's up at the top. So that allows you to start putting that kind of equipment in very tight restricted spaces in culverts and things, where your water pressure sensor is right at the bottom of the stream. You have a 10-meter, whatever length cable you require. You can even place it up a pole, a telegraph pole, whichever, tree, whatever, it doesn't matter, and just put the sender unit up, and it's higher out of the way. So there's a lot of actual benefits. You can get the broadcasting unit further up, so that's a good thing and works really well. This is monitoring a building here for temperature and humidity. This is our main, in Conwy Councils now, this is our main office building. And it's good to look at the 28th, 29th, 30th of December, around then. Those are the 3 days that the office building was open, and you can see that the heating was on at that time. And then you can then start to see the 5-day kind of working pattern on what's going on. Looks like a bit of heat going on in the on the Saturday as well. CCTV is based there, so that's fine. But that's, you don't want to go into each sensor. You don't want to start looking at each bit of data. That can be an onerous job. So a bit like how I mentioned with the temperature sensors, how you can just look at a lot of data at the same time. That's where we have this wee beastie. Just a lot of temperature sensors across the entire office building, and you can quite clearly see there how the weekends stand out with their vertical blue stripes. And then you can start to see how the how we've got some horizontal blue stripes. Now I can tell you a few of those are actually in some overzealously refrigerated computer rooms, which has been raised with facilities. That's for them to investigate. But you can see that we've got an issue on the very bottom row. The 30th of December, you can see how it was being heated appropriately on a 5-day cycle, and then from the 30th of December, it's just gone blue. It's just gone to 18 degrees. But you can just see that you're not having to go into each graph. You can just say there's an anomaly. So I think these are really good. This type of graph is also really good for monitoring movement in say an elderly person's home or an assisted living type scenario. We've got many rows of sensor data there, but you could have one row for a living room, you could have one row for a kitchen, one row for a bedroom, one row for a bathroom. And like the argument there is, you might approach an elderly person and say, how are you at toileting and stuff at night? And they may be reserved or pride or whatever, and they might say, no, I'm fine, I'm not really up and about or whatever at night. But you can then have the data and you go, actually, well, Mrs. Jones, you're up and about 8 times during the night. There's an issue. Because if you're up and about 8 times during the night, there's quality of life issues going on there. So you can actually start to gather that kind of data as well, and you can just see it. So I think that's probably one of my favorite type of graphs. So what and how, I've shown you how we can measure temperature, and that's obviously with building management for offices and schools. That's obviously good work for landlord properties. This county council doesn't have responsibility. We don't have council houses that's all farmed off to housing association, and many years ago. But that could work for any housing association, or indeed nice private landlords. Hotels as well. I think this would really work well with B&B type not landlords, B&B type hotel. This is also present within Conway, because Llandudno, which is the main Victorian resort, 20%, I think it was, 20% of all hotel beds in Wales are in Llandudno, because it's just so heavily skewed to accommodating all the visitors. So for all the kind of B&Bs, is that you might obviously want to keep the bedrooms or rooms appropriately warm whilst you've got the visitors there. But then, because it's B&B, they're out during the day. So then you can drop the temperatures down with using LoRaWAN sensors. Make sure the temperature goes down. You want the temperature to be cooler anyhow, because your staff are maybe going in doing hard physical work and changing sheets and doing all the cleaning. So you actually have the temperature lower, which is better for them. And then subsequently, you can then just raise the temperature again later on at 4 o'clock. Your residents come back, and so they think it's all good, and you've actually saved some money as a hotel owner. Don't forget as well the automatic recording for Legionella. My wife used to work in a library, and it was her job. It was her job as the staff member at the library to record the water temperature, and I have no doubt that she did the job well, and she did it effectively. However, does everybody else? And this is, I think, is the biggest argument for automatic recording of just about any kind of data, is that the data has been, the job has been done, it's been done properly, the data hasn't been falsified or inaccurately recorded, and you're also, in the council, if you're over 25, and even if you're the lowest wage, you're looking at £12 an hour. So that's not effective use of time to pay someone to go and check the temperature of a water tap. So, I think it's an overall saving. I've talked about adjusting room temperatures remotely, and it's not just one building either. It's not just a house, whatever. It's a big. You can look at multiple buildings from like a central view. I don't know about everyone else, but we have an Aldi supermarket near us that has electronic price tags. They're not paper. Staff don't change them. You see them updating whilst you're walking around the Aldi as well. And I think the same. That means that at that Aldi, there's obviously someone in head office who's just changing prices. Oh, I don't know. The peas aren't selling very well today. We'll reduce the price of those, and they can just do that essentially across the entire nation. And I think that's the same type of thing here. If you're controlling the temperatures for buildings, or you can start to have a real understanding and a real feeling of what's going on. So I think there's huge measures there for companies to embrace. We've continued to talk about measuring the temperatures. So this is from the sensibility side as well, where we're working with a farm to measure the temperatures in a medicine fridge. Because they have all the medicines for all the livestock. And we've actually sorted out, we've been messing around with OpenAI here to analyze the historical data that's gathered, and to actually do a threshold advice, but then also analyze the data and say, we think over the previous 4 hours, the data, that it has been doing this, or whether, and it means the farmer can make a decision whether, it's just a blip, or whether there's actually a bigger thing going on. So they don't just get an alert on the threshold, they also get a synopsis of like the previous 4 hours of data in a basic WhatsApp message. That works well. And so you can measure all the temperature, and hospitality and catering, the same logic with the medicine fridge, because I will talk more on the hospitality and catering. Medicine fridges, don't forget, it's also about temperature controlled logistics as well. You're monitoring all that kind of stuff going on. I've touched on having the automatic record keeping. You're not relying on a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old to measure the temperature of your food fridges and things. You've got that data being recorded accurately. You can receive the notifications on alerts, and you maybe have some AI analysis going on as well to maybe, like I said, give you a bit of a synopsis. And sausage meat saved, that's my aid memoir for a cafe that we're aware of, where they had a fridge failure. And they came in, and it was a fridge that contained all the sausage meat that they used. And he was saying to the owner of the restaurant, was saying that he'd write off the value of that sausage meat, because he couldn't take the risk of when the fridge had failed, and obviously the negative publicity of possible bad meat and things subsequently, and all the reviews and stuff on Google Maps and TripAdvisor, etc. is just not something he wants to go down. However, because he had the historical data, he was able to realize that the fridge had only failed like 2 hours earlier. So therefore, it was still within Food Safety Agency's compliancy rules. He didn't write off the sausage meat, and saved himself over £500 in value. So, there's a good story there. So this is where I think it's a good example of actually the public sector work, then the sensibility work, then going back to the feeding back into the public sector work also has big benefits as well. So we had some funding originally to explore how we could monitor the fridge and freezer temperatures in schools from the Welsh Government. So I went for, because in a catering environment, because as a teenager, like many other people, I had a cafe job, and I remember you'd have like banks of fridges and freezers kind of all together. That's what that photo there is representing. And so I thought, well, it would be best then if I had, what would be good value would be if I had one sending unit, and I could have 3 separate probes. Then that way, if I place the sender unit on the middle fridge, I should be able to reach the left-hand side, the middle fridge, and the fridge on the right. But no, that's what we found out, because I was thinking maybe we could get it through maintenance port or something on the fridge or freezer, but it means you have to pull the fridges and freezers out. The installation costs start to be very high. You find some horrors behind the fridges and freezers as well. I mean, it's an industrial catering environment. It's so not quite as clean as your domestic fridge area. So that kind of thing. So that caused hassles. That was a learning curve. So then one probe to go to one fridge, one freezer. That kind of works. That works well. And we tried that out. But the cable then goes through the door seal. This doesn't actually affect the temperature. Got the evidence of it now. Doesn't actually affect the temperature detrimentally in the fridge or the freezer. That doesn't affect it. But what is a problem is the moist, warm air of the fridge going of the kitchen, sorry, going into the cooling appliance. So we'd end up with icing up, which made us very unpopular. So what we've also tried is this sensor from Milesight, and it's a good bit of kit. But this is so it's food safety grade. It's IP67. It comes with magnets, so you can place it to just clamp it on the inside of the fridge freezer. That works really well. Therefore, you don't have the wires and things. However, as you'll all notice, lots of fridge freezers are made out of metal. So as soon as you close that door, it's just like a cheap Faraday cage. So what we've done, and again, you'll see this on the presentation as we go through, we've put a lot of gateways out for community coverage, and we're expecting some really good results and things. But as soon as you start to involve the metal of a fridge and freezer, just the radio signal quality will just fall off a cliff. And what we've ended up doing in some areas is just backfilling with some small local gateways, and that completely resolves it. It's all good. Not a huge issue for us in Conway Council, because in the schools that have, definitely in the rural areas, we've got the school, they've got a canteen for serving the children and things, but we've also got a gateway located there anyhow, serving the community. So that's been fine there as well. And this is on the sensibility side of things, where we have a butcher customer who has a massive walk-in fridge, and then you walk into the massive walk-in fridge, and in the corner there is a large walk-in freezer. So it's double-skinned metal. And what we found was this Dragino units worked really well in the walk-in areas. So because it's a walk-in fridge or a freezer, you don't have a door seal to worry about per se, because the unit's just inside the fridge freezer area. The little antenna on the sender unit works really well to give you a few more extra decibels on the radio quality. So that was really good. And a good story, and it just makes you realize to just be very careful with the environment and expect the unexpected. So the butchers with the walk-in fridge and the walk-in freezer, it was working off the community gateway at first. And it would only work during the day when the business was open, but during the night there's just no radio signal coming out, and we couldn't understand why. And what it actually was it's a wholesaler's butcher's shop. So it's maybe it's on an industrial estate, so they have metal shutters. So when they shut the metal shutters at night, again, it's just a small, cheap Faraday cage. It turns the building into a small Faraday cage, and the signal wasn't getting out. Didn't help either. It's next to a railway with a metal palisade fence, and there's also a huge 4G, 5G mast serving Vodafone and O2, and that was also affecting it all. So we ended up putting a small local gateway there to resolve their comms issues, but that's all worked. And it just continues to demonstrate, yeah, there are limitations, but the cool stuff you hear about LoRaWAN, where it just goes through metal and buildings and stuff, is true as well. You just have to adjust your attack method, really. Oh yeah, so here we go. This is the radio ready reckoner, the LoRa handy checker. Now, this stuff won't get you to pass an exam, okay? I can't stress that enough. This is just kind of my rule of thumb book when people ask me, will it work somewhere? And, you know, just kind of real world experiences. So you might well know that all the sensors are sending data at different spread factors, and they adjust their different spread factors depending on their different environments. So spread factor 7 has the highest data to capacity. Spread factor 12 has the lowest. We have a really good example of this where we placed a pollution sensor in an environment before we managed to deploy more of the community gateways out. We're placing a pollution sensor next to a road, next to the A5, the old trunk road between London and Dublin. And because there were no other gateways, it was actually sending data out at spread factor 12. And it was having to send, there was so much data coming from the temperature, the humidity, the atmospheric pressure, the nitrous oxide sensor and particle sensor. All of that information couldn't actually be carried on the spread factor 12 it was having to be broadcast at. So it was sending 3 spread factor 12 broadcasts within 30 or 40 seconds out, therefore just eating battery life, infringing all the free air licensing that goes on. So we ended up placing an indoor gateway about 100 meters away in some public toilets, and that resolved that issue for us. So just the spread factor 12, because it has the lowest data capacity, is also known as DR0, data rate 0, and then you can just see how it just kind of goes up DR1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at spread factor 7. And so I've mentioned there about how spread factor 12 can use up your battery life, and that has the longest time on air. So again, you just work on these kind of sums of 1.5 seconds, and I apologize for teaching people to suck eggs here, but I think a spread factor 12 is it's like you're having to shout some data out. So my analogy there when I'm explaining to people is, I think of it when if you've either have children today or when you were a kid and you were going out for a walk with your friends, you're on a field somewhere and it was windy. If you were shouting your friend, who might be called Christopher for argument's sake, you'd shout Christopher, but you'd have to go Christopher. You have to shout louder, you have to say his name longer, and you're having to blast his name through the wind. And that's why it takes 1.5 seconds to get that data through. And then you can just find kind of rule of thumb, halve it each time. And that means you're not having to broadcast the data as long through the air. You're not having to go Christopher, you just have to put less effort into it. And it ends up coming down to spread factor 7, where you can just go Chris, and therefore it's nice and fast, and you're not using a lot of airtime, and it's all good. So, and then again, this is part of my the radio ready reckoner. This is on the Ofcom kind of rules, and it's just a ready reckoner. Please don't try to pass an exam with this. But spread factor 12, roughly you're allowed to broadcast that data once every 80 minutes. It's actually something like 72 minutes or something like that, but just call it 80, then it's easy numbers to remember, because then spread factor 11, you're then allowed to broadcast that data once every 40 minutes. And you can just see you can halve it. And you come down to spread factor 7, and then you can actually then broadcast that same data from a sensor once every 2.5 minutes, and still stay within your legal compliance within the free radio data range that you're allowed to use from Ofcom. So there's a good argument using spread factor 7, or try to get to spread factor 7. You have faster data, uses less battery power, and it has more, you're allowed to send the data more frequently. And I've repeated myself a little bit there because I've gone ahead of myself, but talking about the battery life, which then allows us to talk about the battery life for a bit longer. So spread factor 7. So this is important because quite often when you have an IoT sensor, and I know I'm talking about the LoRaWAN ones a lot, and that's where we've gone down in Conway. We've gone down the LoRaWAN ones. Should have mentioned that at the top really. But we have some poor mobile phone coverage in the county, even in towns that are very popular with tourists, like in Llandudno. There's like one bank holiday festival there where over like the towns are like 13,000 people, and about 120,000 people come on that bank holiday weekend. It's just but so we have lots of visitors even during the summer and things, but the mobile phone coverage is just really poor, let alone in the rural areas where it's just you don't have the population density that might make the commercial arguments difficult, and also the topography and things. So it's on that kind of basis we just started on the LoRaWAN, because also you're not having to put SIMs in each of the sensors. Other guys in the team in the IT department that I work in also have responsibility for dealing with the PSTN, the normal copper lines, and SIPs and all that kind of stuff, and all the recharge of BT, and they hate it. They absolutely hate trying to understand all that data that's coming through and where those lines actually are. So can you imagine how much worse it is when you're trying to work out which SIMs are in which sensors, which are mobile and moving around everywhere? That's why I think it's for us the big argument for going LoRaWAN is that you buy the sensor and that's it. It's just kind of working. You don't have to worry about the additional carrier costs. So spread factor 7, if the manufacturer is saying 5-year battery life or a 10-year battery life, you'll normally find that those are saying at 25 degrees. There's no way in the UK it's 25 degrees except for a few days in June, and you're putting maybe lots of sensors outside, you're definitely not hitting 25 degrees. So your battery life is definitely a massive variable, and that's why it's kind of like definitely a rule of thumb. And if they're saying like 5 years and things, that they are talking about spread factor 7. They're not talking about spread factor 10, 11, and 12. They're talking spread factor 7 to get the battery gains that you need. So just using this as a guide as well. So if a manufacturer is saying 10-year lifespan, let's assume spread factor 7, and we're assuming that we're sending data every 20 minutes. So to keep it simple, if we double how often double how often we're sending the data. We're not sending the data every 20 minutes, we're sending it every 10 minutes now. You can roughly expect that battery to last 5 years. Obviously, there are other variables, because it's not just the radio broadcast. You're now actually measuring the temperature more often as well. So there is data consumption, but by far and away your biggest bit of battery consumption is in the actual radio broadcast. And then spread factor 8, if you send that data every 10 minutes, that'll be 2.5 years. And if you send it spread factor 8 every 20 minutes, that'll be about 5 years. So spread factor 8 is using about twice as much battery power as spread factor 7. Spread factor 9 uses about twice as much battery power. Spread factor 9 uses about twice as much battery power as spread factor 8, and so on and so forth. Spread factor 8, if you send the data every 40 minutes, you can expect it to be 10 years. So you can see back where we were. So again, it goes on about how the spread factor 7 is just a good thing. It's a good target for you to aim for if you want to deliver those project savings and things. And spread factor 8, and if you send that at 80 minutes, 20 years, I'd say that's unlikely, because batteries degrade, their battery performance is less when it's cold. I'd say you'd have environmental problems then as well, water ingress, rodents, all sorts of things, but that's what might happen. But let's just take it where we can go. So spread factor 9, leaving at 80 minutes. So then the battery life's at 10 years. Spread factor 10, 80 minutes, 5 years, 2.5 years, 1.25 years. You can just see we're halving it. And these are just, and then if you want to start sending the data more often, this is the issue I had with the pollution sensor. Spread factor 12 at 40 minutes, talking 0.6 years, and SF12 at 20 minutes. You're talking a third of a year. So you just want your data to come through at spread factor 7 generally. Now I know, so yeah, what and how? I'd say that spread factor 12, 11, and 10 are bad from my experiences. They don't have the data capacity and they just consume battery. I know that the water industry aims for spread factor 9. Now, the water meters in the UK are actually quite tricky but it's a tricky environment because most of our water meters are underground, 30 to 45 centimeters underground. Lots of them also have a metal lid, which is not conducive. So you'll know in environments where they are deploying those, they're deploying gateways at a higher density than what we've certainly done in Conway, but also that they are aiming that their worst case scenario is that sensor is sending in at spread factor 9 because they need the battery life to get those returns on the 10, 15 years or whatever it is that they need off their water sensors. So how do you achieve spread factor 7? So with LoRaWAN, again, apologize for teaching people to suck eggs. You have the adaptive data rate. So relying on RSSI and SNR, the RSSI, it's just basically how well the radio signal has been received by the receiver being the gateway, and SNR is the signal to noise ratio, and that's just noise that's added in. So think about the environment, the situation I said before about our imaginary friend Christopher in the field. Noise there could just be the wind, but when we're talking LoRaWAN, noise can just be metal. I know I gave that example there about the butchers and the metal shutters and the palisade vents and all that kind of thing. So how does the sensor work with ADR? So this table's from the TTN website. So your LoRaWAN network server, the LNS, does all the hard work, and a LoRaWAN sensor will listen every time they broadcast. A LoRaWAN sensor is listening for a downlink to receive data. And what will happen is the LNS server is analyzing all of the data it's received, and every 20 bits of data have been received, and it'll then send the downlink down to the sensor and say, you actually start broadcasting at this spread factor. And that's where you start to get the benefits, that if you are closer to gateways and things, then you can start to broadcast at spread factor 7 and things. So yeah, I've just touched the LoRaWAN sensors can receive data, and after a send it listens, and I've said about the 20, and it allows adjustments as the environment changes, because there's no environment that's ever static. It's always moving around. People move furniture around, bits of equipment get moved around, and things just change. So I think it's good. It's important to note that when a gateway sends downlinks, it cannot listen. It's not duplex. It is literally for like milliseconds, whereas we've seen now with spread factor 7. It's incredibly quick, but nonetheless it happens. But you can work around that by having more gateways, because as long as other gateways are in the vicinity listening, then that means one core gateway can be sending data. And I've got a worked example of this where we've got in Conway Council, we've got a new respite centre with a LoRaWAN gateway on it, and 1 kilometre away we have another school. Because we were monitoring the data for assisted living, we wanted to ensure we were getting correct data, which is why maybe we might not have historically put another gateway there, but it was all funded, so we did that. So I was sending downlinks to a sensor, and I was at the respite centre. I was at that location, and I could see that the downlinks were actually coming through that gateway, despite the fact that I could see that uplinks from the sensor were being received at the respite centre and at the school at spread factor 7. The LNS, or the TTN environment that we are using in Conway, is designed well enough to send the data down the closest gateway, which that's just clever design. So I'm just taking a little drink whilst you admire the map of North Wales. So we are using a TTN network, that's the free community one. And that's because if you go to this website, ttnmapper.org, you can actually see the coverage. We've been doing a lot of coverage around where we are here in North Wales. I've been using a fantastic bit of hardware, the Glamos unit. This is really great because you can go to a location and then actually send data at spread factor 7. Excuse the Harry Styles cushion behind me. You can send data at spread factor 7. You can send data at spread factor 8. You can choose the actual spread factors, and therefore you can determine what kind of battery life or what kind of signal you'd actually get at that particular location. So if you go to that website, certainly in the Conway area, you'll see lots of coloured dots, and that's because I take that sensor out with me a lot when I'm walking and driving around doing jobs and things. So the county council is roughly in this kind of red square area. We've got different county councils surrounding us, and you can definitely see how we have a higher density of gateways in that area compared to the other nearby county councils. The purple gateways that you can see on that map are TTI gateways, so they're the private gateways. They are often configured to be there's another system behind the scenes called packet broker. So if a sensor is configured for TTI, if it hits either a TTN gateway or a TTI gateway, the system behind the scenes, the packet broker, will redirect it into the correct environment. And likewise, it's the same as well. If we've got a TTN configured sensor, if it hits a TTI gateway, it will be routed by the packet broker back onto the TTN network. So you might say, "Oh, what's the whole point of it? What's the merits?" So TTN's free, but it is still like a sandbox kind of. It's far better than a sandbox. We have found it inherently reliable. It's really good. But under the terms and conditions of licensing and things, you're limited to the number of downlinks that you can do to sensors, which might be useful if you want to do, if you wanted to maybe make an actuator work, because we thought about having remote locking of toilets, after hours to save someone going out with a set of keys, or if you want to change lights and things like that, or if you want to do the TRVs, the thermostatic radiator valves. If you wanted to send a lot of downlinks, you need to use TTI under the rules, and that costs more money. Those purple ones there have actually been used, that you can see in Blaenau Ffestiniog, or more of the western part of North Wales. That's a housing association who've also using the data, but they've decided to invest in with TTI to support them. So TTN, it's an open network. Anyone can use. I've touched on about how we can have the map and we can just prove to people where you have coverage. I've touched in the rest of the presentation how there's no communication costs directly with each individual device. There's no SIMs there. There's no Wi-Fi limitations. It's 8 kilometers in rural areas, and we definitely get that. It's pretty fantastic. Many of the sensors are battery powered. You can get 5 to 10 year battery life, but that will be the little sensors, doing temperature and humidity really. And as I've touched, some buildings and localities need additional gateways. That might be because of the topography, or it might be because of the actual the noise that they actually have there. Metal's not your friend. So I've just got some photos of some schools, because we found that the schools have worked really well. As I say, we're covering communities, so connecting it all up, all we need is education. The village schools cover the communities. In large towns, there are obviously more schools, so you end up with multiple sites, which obviously provide resilience as well. Should you have a site going down, that's important. In the schools, we have a managed network infrastructure as well. So our gateways are placed on the PSTN network, not the PSTN network, PSBA network, public sector broadband aggregation, which we have in Wales. I don't know if there's something equivalent in England. But then that means it's on the Wild West. It's the equivalent of our library network, where the public and things can go in there. But it means that we can just do remote restarts of switches and obviously of the actual gateways as well, because they're all PoE. That helps. Planning law as a local authority, it does help us as well, because in Wales, under the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order 1995, Schedule 2, Part 12, Class A, open brackets, B, close brackets. I love legal law. we are allowed, a local authority is allowed to do development for the benefit of the community. Now, it's a really old bit of law, so it mentions things like troughs, drinking fountains, and litter bins. So it's written some point in 1938, I suspect, but the law is still there. Now, you can see that law there came into Wales in 1995 because Wales devolved. The planning law devolved from England. So I have to assume that that relevant law still exists in England. I don't know. So that law has just kind of been copied onto the Welsh statute book. So local authorities only, but you check, yeah, your caveat. Connecting it all up. So I've touched on how we definitely prefer the schools, but there are definitely lots of people who go, oh, you know, doing streetlights and things are good. But I've had a bit of a different experience, and this is why. The lighting engineers, you can see there how the gateway isn't at the top of the post, which means it's running parallel. The antenna of the gateway is running parallel to the actual metal of the post, and as we've learned there, metal is a bad thing. You can expect a massive decrease in the performance of your gateway there. I was provided these lighting columns for free, which was beneficial. But I think I'll try and find other solutions now. And also you can see here how I've managed to, I had to get the lighting engineers to come back out to this one, because again, that was situated too low, and they've gone back out and placed it higher where the antenna is above the gateway. Question from David Wallace. Scott, with a view to national deployment, what were your main return of investment value for money points made to your council, and did they respond promptly? We did it from multiple angles, and I'd probably say that's probably the way to do it. So Brexit had happened, but we still had access to European funding for a good chunk of the sensors in the rural localities, so that funded a lot there. Some departments funded, social services funded one for us in the urban areas on the coast. So actually trying to find funding in the urban areas was really difficult. And we also had funding directly from Welsh Government, where we just asked, we were cheeky, we asked, and we were able to get some funding for more gateways as well. And also our flooding team can get funds from government, and one of them was about improving communication and improving data. So we were able to fund gateways from that. So yeah, promptly, elements of it were, some of it took a really long time. But that's good. We approached it from different angles. Yeah, so there's the gateways there. What I think now is that if I had a locality where I had to put the gateway in if I had no school or library or office building to put it on, I would do one of these hinged lighting columns now. You can see they got a lot of weight on them. They can support CCTV cameras. It means that you can go out as an IT person and not as a lighting engineer, and go out and do work on it if you need to. If you just need to check something and verify it, because the lighting engineers, their primary job is to fix streetlights. And if you go along just going, oh, can you go and check this? And if it's winter time, they actually have an issue. Whether you know, you're further down the list, to be honest. So that's what I definitely advocate. Take the hit on the capital cost of that, and then you'll just have a lower ROI. But yeah, because I have to pay for the engineer to go out, and I have to hire the cherry picker. I can't remember, aerial platform, whatever the proper name for it is. So we have to hire that. So that all puts cost on. So how have we connected it inside within the authority? Oh, is my screen still being shared?
It is. Hey Scott, we are running over time quite a lot, by 20 minutes. In fact, super engaging. In fact, I think we need to bring you back to be able to ask you some really in-depth questions, because you covered a huge amount there, and absolutely amazing and interesting, and it's quite phenomenal, the breadth that you've done there. But we do seem to be losing some viewers, as we can't quite often do after over the hour. But thank you very much for coming and joining us. I would like to have you back in so we can talk a little bit more in depth about the different projects that you've done as well, because I think there's an awful lot of learning for people from here. John, anything from you? Oh, John's on mute.
Month's meetup is smart devices RUPSTI compliant. There's a big piece of legislation coming out. So if you're a device manufacturer, you will need to know about this. So please come along to next month's event.
And there we go. Nice fancy picture with the new branding on. Thanks, John. Scott, as I said, we've actually got a couple of questions. Charles mentioned, makes me wonder whether every council in the UK work on their own, or do you share best practices at all?
Yeah, we do. We definitely talk with the Welsh councils, but I couldn't see any reason why I wouldn't share it with any English councils either, or Scottish or Irish.
Yeah. Absolutely fantastic feedback here for you, Scott. Well done, mate. Wonderful presentation. Exemplary, Scott. Very well done. Amazing presentation. Some very sophisticated graphs. Loved listening about the use case. Thank you so much. We really need to get you back. You've got so much experience and an awful lot to share. And I've actually had some messages from contacts and councils actually really interested in what you've been doing as well. Cool. You've made it look really easy, by the way.
A few evenings there.
But absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. Charles, look forward to working with you and the team moving forward a lot more intricately. And on that, thank you very much and good.